In South Africa, a magistrate's court in Johannesburg has found Dudu Zane Zuma, the son of former South African President Jacob Zuma, not guilty of culpable homicide and reckless driving. The case relates to an incident in 2014 when Mr. Zuma's car hit the back of a minibus in Johannesburg, killing a woman from Zile Dube instantly. The magistrate found that the state failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the accused was guilty of negligence. Our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, has more.
Thank you very much. South Africa's former President Jacob Zuma and other family members were among those in court in support of the accused as the magistrate Tebogo Tupatlase read through the case timeline and gave his verdict.
It is therefore found that the state failed to prove the case against the accused to be reasonable. The version of the accused is one to be reasonable possible two. The accused is found not guilty of the all right.
A visibly relieved Zuma family and their supporters were seen leaving the court. And as usual, the man at the center of it all had very few words to say.
Excuse me, guys. Thank you very much.
We asked the spokesperson of the National Prosecuting Authority, Pindi Njonondwana, if the state will be challenging the judgment.
I've spoken to the prosecutor who prosecuted the matter in this case, and he's of the view that this is a fair judgment. Basically, the court rejected the testimony by state witnesses. Look, at the end of the day, justice seeks to uncover the truth. And we believe that that has been achieved. What we must do as the NPA is to commend the nature of work that was placed behind the preparations for this case.
The younger Zuma's Porsche veered off a highway towards a minibus taxi in 2014 on a rainy evening. This resulted in the death of a female passenger in the taxi, Ms. Phumzile Dube. An earlier two-count charge of culpable homicide had been cut down to one after it was proved that a second fatality was not as a result of the car crash. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the South African National Defence Force has been deployed to violence-hit communities in Cape Town. Local reports say the recent upsurge in violence is due to a turf war between rival gangs fueled by retaliation attacks. At least 20 people have been killed there since last Friday, including 13 people who were shot dead in Philippi East at the weekend. Our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, has more on this story. Betty, what more can you tell us about the violence in Cape Town, where we understand the army is now being deployed?
The violence in some of the areas of Cape Town, especially some of the townships where you have rather lower income earners. It's almost legendary. A lot of people know or may have heard about the Cape Flats, where you see gun violence out there in the open morning, afternoon and night, and many people, young and old, get killed every other day. It's a huge problem that's been affecting many people in the country. And the president recently had promised to look into the violence. We've had something called the Anti-Gang Violence Squad or so. I can't quite remember the name, which was established. And some of them have come under fire, even from the people in the area. The Cape Flats is actually a massive expanse of land, flat lands in the Cape Town area, where a lot of low-income earners live, and I'm not ruling out a bit high-income earners, but they're mainly townships, and there's a lot of violence, especially gun violence in the area. So the issue of the army being deployed, that is supposed to come in. The army is supposed to work with the police to have an operation probably by this weekend, because given the recent violence in a place called Philippi in Cape Town, where about 11 people were killed, or more than that, in the past weekend alone, the Minister for Police, Becky Cele, and the National Commissioner of Police, which is the equivalent of the IGP in the country, Ketla Sitole, they held a town hall meeting with the people where he promised them that within 20 days they'll have a police station commander within 20 days, and they're looking into more ways to address the violence. But I know that a lot of people now are breathing easy, but bullets still fly here and there, and children, in most cases, as you can see in some of the footage I sent to you, usually caught in the crossfire. And it's a violence that's been passed down generations, and people know about it, and it's been hard to tackle by the government.
Betty, it's a really scary situation. At least 20 deaths have been reported since last week, which is a really, really high number. What are the police doing about this crisis, and why is it so difficult for them to handle?
At this point, especially with the appearance of the top police bosses, you've had more police presence. The police is conducting stop and search, and some people are breathing easy. I remember seeing a lady who was saying recently she was mugged, with a gun to her face, and she lost. But they're happy. Many people are happy. Of course, you have people who talk about the psychological impact of seeing such presence of the police, and then now you want to add the army. There are people who think about that, the psychological impact of having or seeing such probably more consistently in the area. But there are still those who are saying these operations should be more consistent so that people can live more freely in the communities, and families live much safer than they have been living for a very long time.
Well, the army was last deployed to tackle Cape Town's gang violence in 2017, which means this problem has been on for quite a while. Betty, what measures are the authorities taking to find a permanent solution to the problem?
In terms of a permanent solution, I guess consistent application of what measures that are already being taken could go a long way. But there are those who say that the issue of gangs, drugs, and violence are just manifestations of deeper problems, which include poverty, unemployment, and inequality. And they believe that beyond the police or military presence in the area, the politicians have to be part of the solution, because fine, having police presence and police raids and the like would help to make people feel safer. But one has to go deeper in trying to find the solutions to this, and that is lifting more and more people out of poverty. And beyond police as a solution, the political aspect of it in lifting people out above the poverty line in the communities or in the economy would go a long way in reducing and probably just eliminating the problem that is seen. But at the moment, you have heavy police presence, and they're waiting the SANDF, that's the South African National Defence Force, by the weekend for an operation across Cape Town, mainly around the townships, because this problem has been here for a long time. And President Cyril Ramaphosa, in one of his earlier speeches, specifically talked about the issue of gang violence in Cape Town. I remember President Zuma at the time as well. But it's been a big problem in the country, and many people have lost their lives. Some children sit within their shacks, and bullets flying from one gang turf to the other just goes through a shack, and a child lies dead. Death is seen every day in these areas. So hopefully the political aspect and the security aspect can meet somewhere, and apart from addressing the visible violence and the visible situation, to help address the economic issues as well. Maybe people would turn away from gang violence, but it is a huge problem. And there's such a divide in these areas compared to other parts of the area in the mother city.
A huge problem indeed, Betty. Thank you so much. We do hope the problem is resolved quickly. Thank you for speaking to us on Network Africa.